welcome to Morlock Me, the weekly podcast where we discuss books and their cinematic adaptations. I'm very sorry we've been away for so long, with the sort of collective effort of myself being ill and Michael being away and just, things not working out as we have planned. But we're back now. Hopefully we shouldn't be off the air again. We should be back now. Apologies again. I know we've done this before, but we're back now, so that should be all sorted. So we're going to kick it off with a great subject, which is Star Wars. Who doesn't love Star Wars? I mean, really, it's fantastic. The new film has obviously come out, The Force Awakens, what's been out for a while. It's just come out on Blu-ray and DVD, so that's all very exciting because we now can get it in our homes without having to pay extortionate prices on things like Sky Movies. And what's interesting is that it's sort of been turned into a book.
Yes, thank you for dropping me in again just at the end of that conversation.
I sort of was, I was going to say like, oh look, this is an interesting, and then because I always talk too much, I'm going to let it hand over to you. You, this is your subject. Sherlock was my subject. This is your subject. Don't hide.
And you ran out of words. You were just like, and it's been turned into a book. No, the interesting thing about Star Wars is that it's one of those few franchises that still does a book of the film. I cannot think of many others / any others that still do this. And the weird thing about it is that there is quite a lot that changes between the book and the film. There's extra insight, there's a few extra scenes in the book. The science, in inverted commas, because you come to Star Wars for the science, is completely different of how particular devices work and things. So, I think this is a really interesting subject because we don't get book adaptations of films quite as much, and so basically we're going to do our usual thing of just pointing stuff out that's different and making humorous observations and
hilarious.
Yeah, because we're funny people and you've missed us and we're sorry. So so the book kind of starts off with a prologue that we don't get in the film. It's kind of the text crawl but written differently. So it does the once there was a republic and once there were Jedi and once there was this and once there was that, and I quite like the writing style that they use for that. It was quite poetic to do that once thing, and then it ties in, and we'll get to this later because we'll do it in order, but it does the same thing rather than scatting about everywhere, but it does the same thing with the epilogue, which is kind of the last scene in the film. And because I didn't know whether they were going to include the last scene of the film in the book because it sort of finished, and I was like, oh, but then there's the epilogue, so it's fine. But yeah, so the first chapter takes place before the film. It gives us an extra bit of Finn's training. There's a training exercise where they're doing it on a desert planet like Jakku and all this sort of stuff. And we get introduced to Finn's fellow stormtroopers, which I think is quite a nice thing because it pays off differently later and it makes us understand who Finn is and why he suddenly sort of goes off on one in terms of the attitude he has, because he's sort of been indoctrinated and then suddenly breaks out of it in the film.
Yeah, I think because what I liked about, because I think what helps is that the fact that the film came out, so I think then they can add things to the book that maybe weren't in it, which I felt with the prologue, because the prologue, sort of the rolling sort of script at the beginning is kind of, we expect it, we're like, come on, this is, but they obviously they can't make that really long. They've kind of got to be like, this is what's happened since we were last on screen, this is what's happened to Luke, Leia and Han, this is what's going on with the new sort of
the New Republic.
New Republic, and sort of like, and what's happening with the dark side and like what's going on there and stuff like that. So they kind of have to make it quick and sort of like snappy because it's like, right, done. Whereas I think the prologue sort of had more sort of reign, where they were like, okay, we can kind of go into it a little bit more. And also, like you're saying, with the training, I think also probably for viewers who have seen the film, maybe that made more sense when sort of his friend dies, like and and that's the handprint over the stormtrooper helmet, and that's probably when you read that you go, Oh, okay. That makes it a lot more. I get that now.
Yeah.
Why? Because in the film, he sort of just like, understandably losing a friend
Yeah.
and someone he's grown up with would be awful. But it's kind of it's what you've been trained to do, and it's kind of like you would just think, you're very sad, but you have to carry on
Yeah.
and do what you're told and do what Phasma would tell you to do. But then when you get this first chapter of this book, you understand it a lot more, that it's like what they all went through together, and it's like what it means that he's lost this person. So you go, okay, I understand it more. I think also with the book, is they've padded it out more, because I think it's for people who maybe, I don't know, I know that probably there's very few people who have done this but have not seen the Star Wars films.
Yeah.
I think maybe who, I don't know, might have seen it and maybe not got a lot of it because they've
Yeah.
not seen, or maybe like they've seen the 3 original films and maybe the prequels once,
Yeah.
and then never gone back to it and just kind of gone, oh, I don't really get what the significance of all of things in the Force Awakenings means. Well, where people in the audience might gasp at one thing, and then this person might be going, I don't get it. I think that's what this book is for, is to kind of go, this is kind of what a lot of it means, and like, don't worry, we're going to kind of help you on that road. So I think that's what they've done, so that it can branch out to people who maybe are fans, who love the series, and that's a book for them. But I think it's also for people who maybe, I don't know, like the film but maybe wanted to know a bit more. I think that's kind of what they've done with the book, is they've kind of not for everything, they kind of just been like, this is what this happened, and like, this is who Rey's father is and all stuff like that. They've not done that, but I think that that's what they've done, is they've tried to sort of layman's term it for, and also like pad out the background of a lot of other things. So that's what I think they've done with that, and I think they've done it quite well, because I really enjoyed the book.
Yeah.
As much as it's not like a massive tome, it's not huge, it's not massive. Like, I was shocked how small it was, to be fair, because considering the film, and so much is going on different planets, and there's different characters, and there's both sides, there's the Republic, stuff like that. I think that there was a lot going on, and I expected the book to be a lot thicker, but when it came out really small, I was like, oh, okay, they must have chopped a load of stuff out.
Yeah.
But they kind of have and haven't, if that makes
Yeah.
any sense.
Yeah, and as you say, there are extra scenes that are included on the DVD. So there's deleted scenes, like there's ones in Maz's castle, and there's things like that. And particularly with Finn at the beginning, there's a little bit of a scene where he points his rifle to shoot a villager and hesitates and doesn't kill her, and then sort of sees her die later on, I believe, which is very affecting in the book, actually, because they don't, and that is a scene that they produced, they did it, but then decided to cut it from the film because they felt it didn't add anything. But actually, I kind of feel like it does, because it the reasons that Finn does change sides is partly because of his massive crush on Poe, and who can blame him? But that sort of thing, and the fact that his friend dies and he suddenly gets blood on his helmet, and that is kind of Star Wars, like the way that it has worked in the past. There are quick moral compunction changes, like Anakin, yes, you can kind of see the progression of the fall, but the point where he actually goes, no, I am a Darth Vader, is quite quick, because he suddenly goes, I need him, about Palpatine, and chops off Mace Windu's arm, and you're sort of like, oh, okay, we're there, great, okay. And then obviously when Luke and Darth Vader help each other, and Darth kills the Emperor, that's quite a quick turn. If you've not looked at Luke trying to bring his father back, but it's still quite sudden, and that's kind of how plot twists work in a lot of films and books. Is that it is that quite quick thing, and it suddenly makes a lot of stuff make sense. Whereas in Star Wars, there is a lot of build up, but it's not necessarily always that subtle.
Yeah, like, I think with the whole thing with Darth Vader sort of getting rid of the Emperor when he's basically trying to kill Luke to turn to the dark side, you sort of were like, I think we were all expecting him to do that. Like, not, I don't know. I think maybe that's just because I'm saying we've seen it a million times, and so you go like, come on, it's your son, come on, Darth. You kind of like, you were willing him to do it. I think when I first saw it, like, you can see him when he's doing the sort of the cutback shots to his face. You are like, he is going to do it, because it's like, I think even he realizes that he fought to essentially save Padme and make sure she was safe, and he failed. And I think then it's kind of that thing of, I'm now standing back while my son is being affected by the same cause essentially as my wife died, and I can't stand it anymore. So I think there was you could kind of in a sense see that coming, because you will, I think, when you've got all that background, you can kind of go, but I think maybe on first sight you shouldn't have seen it. The thing with the Force Awakens, among many things which were great, like I really loved it. Like we were both very excited. Well, you more than anybody, you went and saw the midnight viewing because you're a massive fan, which is
fan, that's the word, not terrible nerd.
No, not terrible. We're both nerds on this. I geek out to Sherlock Holmes, you geek out to Star Wars,
and you're gonna geek out to what we're doing next week, so it's fine.
Exactly. So we're all nerds in our own right. And it's one of those things where it's like, when it came out, because it's like when a Star Wars film comes out, it's kind of the similar thing to like when Bond comes out. It's a big thing, like
it's an event.
It's like it's not just confined to, like, maybe Bond is confined a bit more to the UK because it's a British spy film. It's like a big thing with the British, like when you think of, I think like they did a thing for the 2012 opening or closing, I can't remember, ceremonies of the Olympics. Bond was featured because Bond is a big character in the British society. So it's a big thing, and also, like everyone wants to see it. Like when Skyfall came out, everyone went nuts. Like when Spectre came out, everyone went nuts. And they've done it for years. It's been going on. It's the same with Star Wars. Like obviously initially everyone's like, what is this film? But as it, the second film came out, the third film came out, it was a massive thing because it was one of those films that we kind of hadn't really seen before, because it was, we'd seen sci-fi, we'd seen going into space, but it kind of was a bit of everything, because there was comedy, there was adventure, there was romance, there was sci-fi, there was, horror in the sense of like this, these characters, there was, and the ways in which he, Darth Vader killed people, or like, who the Emperor was. And so it literally was one of those films that we hadn't, well, not we, because I wasn't really around when their first films came out. But yes, I am that young. But in the sense of like talking to my dad, who did go and see it when he was younger and stuff like that, and it's like it was one of those phenomenon which you don't get a lot, where it was so popular and people were just like, oh, I've seen it. It's like, don't tell me what happened. And it was like finding out that Darth Vader was Luke Skywalker's father.
Spoilers.
I've done it, internet. I've ruined the world. But when he found out that he was Luke's father, it was like the biggest thing. Like people were like, "What? This is the biggest twist in the world," and stuff like that. And that's what I think they're trying to emulate with the Force Awakens, with I believe Rey's father, or Rey's family, really, like or like just it is for me, and I think we've discussed this. For me, it is way too obvious that it's Luke, and I don't think
it's not Luke. It's not. It would be incredibly stupid if it was Luke.
But it would be like that. Like they want to do another one of those moments that's the they want the crowd to be like, oh my god, what, I was not expecting this. They want another one of those moments like which they had with Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. But to make it Luke would be so too obvious. Like Luke, I definitely feel, and not from the Daisy Ridley photo that she had on her birthday of of him on her back, but he is going to be more of the like the Obi-Wan Kenobi kind of Yoda figure, where he is going to be, which I think they've had in all three sort of essential franchises of the film. They've had that wise, maybe wasn't wise at the start, but has grown to be wise man who can teach this sort of young up and comer, and someone who maybe is confused and conflicted and doesn't know that they had these powers and doesn't know that they're entitled to great things. But I think they've done it really, really well. Like we know it was very similar to A New Hope. We all knew that.
It's almost beat for beat the same story, but I think that actually adds to it in a certain way, in that they had a lot to prove with this film. They had an awful lot to prove.
Well, they were like, there were so many skeptics. As soon as they went, "There's Star Wars is coming back," they were like, "What?" And then we were like, "It's with Disney." Like, really? It was a big skeptic.
And then they were like, "Yeah, it's with J.J. Abrams, who'd kind of done right by Star Trek to start with ish, and then just ruined it." in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then the fact that they managed to show that they got the aesthetic right, that they'd got the old characters back, that they'd done right by them to what I think is a ridiculous degree. I mean, we could have maybe done with more Luke, but I feel like we might get him
Building to Luke.
building, and from what J.J. Abrams has said writing the script, every time they introduced Luke, he broke it because he's so powerful and all this sort of thing. And I wonder how they're going to deal with that in the next film, whether he's just going to be absolutely amazing or whether he's going to break the story. And that's a real challenge, I think.
Well, I think with J.J. Abrams, because he's not coming back to direct.
No.
He's coming back. I believe he's coming back to produce and sort of help with it, but he's not taking the helm this time. Which, I think maybe, I don't know if I think it is wise, because I think, for such, because it's not as if it's like just, I don't know, a little film that's going. It's a big responsibility,
Yeah.
and it's either that he doesn't want to take all the credit. I think he'd like to do similar to what they did with the Harry Potter series, where it's a number of directors who gave their own opinions to tell the story in a different way, because it's like the different books are different, and it's like the different films, because we've had the original three, which was like New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, and then we've had the prequel three, which I've forgotten all the names of. What was those ones?
Phantom Menace.
Oh, Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith, he whispers very excited, so it looks like I'm not that thick. I completely forgot. It's because I did like the prequels, but
It's because you'd rather forget them, let's be honest.
yes. But they, they did bring stuff, because they did bring a lot that was like before, like we would have liked to have seen. Things were done. It was George Lucas, it's his universe. He did what he felt was right. So, at the end of the day, it was his work, it was his legacy. If he wanted to do that, that's his in his own right. Like, he created this universe, so he's allowed to do it. Fans obviously are fans, and there's so much literature out there, there's so many remakes, there's so many things out there. So, obviously not everybody's going to be happy. Yes, they weren't great, but I feel that, like what you're saying, they had to bring it back to what we know and what we loved. The sense of there's a band of people that are coming together, people who, like a strong, like I like that they didn't choose Ray to be a boy, because I think, it's great to have such a strong, especially in society now, it's like to have such a strong female lead, but also have the strong male characters with them, so it's not totally like unbalanced, like Finn and Poe, where it's like, and also with the, the whole idea that they didn't have to turn it into, with Finn and Ray, a romantic relationship. They didn't have to be.
Well, there's suggestions, and in the book there's more suggestion than in the film, because they're good friends in the film, and there's points where Ray says, when Finn's been injured, she says, we'll see each other again, I'm sure, which you could interpret romantically. Also, obviously, you could interpret Finn and Poe romantically if you want. #foe.
No.
But I think, the thing about Ray, and the reason that she's such an interesting character, is because she's kind of, a lot of people have accused her of being a Mary Sue, where she's really good at everything she does. And you kind of go, well, actually, she lives on her own, on a desert planet, in the middle of a junkyard. You don't survive for 18 plus years doing that unless you're good. And the fact that she knows the Falcon, and she knows how to fly it really early, she's learned on ships. She's lived in an AT-AT for however long. She's flown ships before, or she's got, in the book, she's got a flight simulator. So I don't think it's too much of a stretch, particularly when you introduce a concept like the Force, because Luke's pretty good at everything at the start of A New Hope, and we don't say, oh yeah, he's a Mary Sue. I think the internet has been a little bit harsh on Ray, and sort of in that sense, because she's a girl, and I think that's really unfair, particularly as she's the hero in this series. It's easy to see from The Force Awakens alone that that's where we're going.
No, absolutely, and I think it's a great character. Like when I was saying about the Finn and Ray relationship, it was like, what I meant was like obviously there were connotations that
Yes.
it can be,
Yeah.
but in the sense that they didn't have to make it like
No.
like where they go off and have a romantic date, or like there's a massive kissing scene. It's like they made it where it's like it's sort of more believable because it's like these people have just been thrust together. Yes, there's obviously going to be maybe an attraction. There's going to be a liking. They're working together. He came back for her. There's lots of things, but I think they're doing it realistically where it's like it's building on, they're getting a friendship grounded and will then build on it, which
Maybe.
or not,
Yeah.
maybe they're just destined to be friends, which is like which I think is like I think they've done that really really well, because I think with the element that with like Han, Leia and Luke in the original, they were all young and there was like three of them, so you could tell like, and also because Leia and Han fought a lot, you could see there was going to be that was going to be like one of those like oh I hate you but I love you kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas these two, they've got on almost immediately, and it's like you kind of see that that's a friendship. It's kind of what similar to what they did with the Guillermo del Toro film Pacific Rim, which is they had sort of the two characters that controlled the Jaeger, which is a man and a woman, but they were seen as like it was seen as like a friendship, and even he commented saying like, why do we have to have it that they're shown to be like madly love? You can have a love that's a friendship. You don't have to make, which I think was right, and I think that's what they've done with The Force Awakens. They've done that where it's like they can love each other, but it doesn't have to be a romantic love, but it can be. But it's like it's left ambiguous because it's not layered on thick. It's kind of you know what I mean, but it's like it's not really, it's like it's not as if like they've kissed, it's not, they've been there for each other and they've looked out for each other, so that's a nice base to leave it on.
It's just there are passages in the book where we go into Rey's psyche and she is thinking about Finn romantically.
Oh yeah, no, I meant in the film, but in the book obviously it's very different. I think that's maybe again they've seen that on the film, they've seen how it's been taken and they've translated it.
Yeah, whereas in the book there isn't any sexual tension between Finn and Poe, because the internet just went crazy on that one. And I don't know, it is open to interpretation, that's the thing. And it's like you said, you don't feel in the film there is a romantic thing between Rey and Finn, whereas people obviously do in the film feel that there is one between Poe and Finn.
It's never going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I don't think Disney's quite brave enough.
Everyone just wants to ship everybody together, and it's like, stop it, leave them alone. Like, they're just really good pals, and they're like, no, they must love each other. It's like, no, please, like, we don't. Please just leave them alone. It's like we know somebody who just wants them desperately to like bring out a book of them like shipped together, and it's like, no, please, just let them be. They're just really close pals. Like, they've only known each other short. Let them get to know each other first.
Yeah, we do know somebody. I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah.
We won't embarrass them. But yeah, I think one of the really interesting things about the way the film and the book differ is obviously the film can do description in inverted commas really easily because it's a visual medium. So as soon as we're introduced to the Finalizer, which is Kylo Ren's flagship, which is not named in the film as far as I'm aware, and good, because it's not a good name, but the opening shot of the film, which is just incredible, and as soon as I saw it I was like, okay, we're back, is when the Finalizer's shadow goes across a planet. And in the book, the way that it describes ships and people is very shorthand. There's a few bits where it will elaborate on what something looks like later, like when it's describing Rey's AT-AT home, it talks about it a bit more. It talks about the X-Wings a little bit more in terms of what they look like, and it talks about the Finalizer later. But actually, it doesn't really describe the ships that much. It doesn't really describe what Finn, Poe and Rey look like at all, which I think, if I'm being generous, and being extremely generous, is saying that it's perhaps to project ourselves into the hero, which is that classic idea but of this kind of story anyway. But it could also be construed as just being incredibly lazy, because some of those ships are on the front cover and you can kind of identify which characters are which from the front cover. And who's not going to have seen the posters / some of the media and know who's playing what?
Yeah, like I felt, which like, because I loved the film, but I did feel one sort of um failing point on it was that they didn't really address, because when they blew up the planets that
Yes.
the Republic
Yes.
on it,
Yeah.
they didn't really go in, like, there was no scenes of like the Republic getting together being like, this must be stopped, and like kind of that element. And I think they lacked that in the film, because
Mm.
I think, that would have been really handy to have seen, to have sort of been like, who's part of the council, and like who's the part of the Republic, and like what does it mean, and stuff like this. And I think if we got to know them, sort of that element a bit more, that would have been quite intriguing. But I suppose at the end of the day, there was so much going on. I suppose they couldn't have included everything, and they sort of, again, they didn't really touch a lot of it in the book. Like, they
Yeah.
sort of addressed it, but then again, like, sort of, it went back to the story that we know. And I think that's in both elements there. They should have maybe they could have done a bit more to explain, like, maybe that, like what was going on, like what action were they doing on the planets, and like what was the Republic doing? Did anybody escape off the planets? Like,
Yeah.
did they know what was going, and that they've escaped, and so that they haven't destroyed the Republic? It's like all these questions are still sort of like left to be answered, really, because it's like, well, oh, it seems a bit sudden that it's just like, oh, they've just they've just destroyed the Republic, like out of the blue, and you're
Mm.
like, oh, okay, well, that's done,
Yeah.
moving on. Yeah, it's kind of that element of it. And I think they sort of missed a trick there. I would have liked to have seen a bit more, but that's just my opinion. Still love the film, not taking it down a shot at all. But I think, of all the things, I think that should have done a bit more development in both book and film. But that's just my opinion.
No, I agree with you. It's not just your opinion. It's quite a lot of people's, actually, from what I understand, because I've pored over internet videos about Star Wars just endlessly since it came out. But no, we don't get the New Republic. They apparently destroyed the fleet that we never see.
Yeah.
And I think that is part of J.J. Abrams as a filmmaker. He is a mystery box filmmaker, and he leaves a lot of questions unanswered.
Because it could be that they'll make a surprise appearance at the next film. We don't know. Maybe that's what they've done it intentionally. I don't know. But I think a plot hole could have been covered up for us, so then we're like, oh, okay, that's done. But
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think the focus on the Resistance rather than on the Republic perhaps is intentional, because it evokes the sequel trilogy or the original trilogy rather than the prequels. Because if as soon as you say the word Republic, everybody goes, oh, politics, and goes, oh, Senate meetings, oh, Trade Federation. And as soon as you say those words, people...
some of us say that.
Okay, fine. I concede the point to the honourable lady. But no, sorry guys. But no, I think, yeah, that is an issue in that I think there was supposed to be there's a deleted scene of a New Republic character, and we're supposed to see her on that planet. The young lady who looks in horror at the sky as the red beam comes across it. She's apparently slightly more substantial in that scene, but not really. And yeah, I do wonder whether that was just to put the focus on the Resistance. But then again, the Resistance themselves don't feature that much in the film. It's Poe and Lars von Tecker, which is played by the wonderful Max von Sydow. Love that man. But then for the most of the rest of the film, it's Rey and Finn. Then Poe's reintroduced out of nowhere in the film. It's better in the book on that point, at least, because we kind of get how Poe escapes. It is ridiculous because he somehow manages to not burn to death on Jakku and then does this crazy stunt with a land speeder and then somehow finds his way off planet. But whatever. But then they're right at the end, the Resistance, and and it's a very Yavin 4 moment. There's the base possibly welling up to shoot the base that the Resistance have, and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I do wonder how, if the New Republic survived in any way, what the First Order is going to do now that Starkiller Base is gone. And I know we're speculating a lot, and we should be talking about the film and the book, but questions, damn it.
Yeah, what you'll learn is that Michael really, really loves Star Wars. We both do, but Michael maybe, well, not maybe, definitely much more. No, but it's a good thing. It's like, it's one of those things, like, it's handy to, because I've watched all the films, and I've read a few bits and pieces, but like, it's handy that quite a lot, because then it's like, Well, it is because it's like if
Yeah.
we didn't know anything, we'd be a
Yeah.
bit like, oh, okay.
I've gone deep. One of the main reasons that I love Star Wars, and this is but it's personal story time on Morlock and Me, is that when I was 4 years old, my family and I went on holiday to New Zealand. We stayed over in Hong Kong on the way back, and some family and friends took us to see the re-release of A New Hope in a Hong Kong cinema, and it had Cantonese subtitles, and I can still remember some of the scenes with the Cantonese subtitles and going, is that part of the film? Because I was 4, I didn't understand what subtitles were. But yeah, and then those family friends then sent over from Hong Kong my very first lightsaber toy, and ever since then I've been absolutely in love with Star Wars. So forgive me for being an uber Star Wars nerd. Yes, I have a Jedi costume. No, you will not see photos on Instagram of it.
Yes, you will. Oh, I felt like we did a collective R then, like when you're like, oh, that's so sweet. No, no, but it's like it's
sulking now.
it's like one of those things where it's Star Wars has sort of been in all of our lives, be it you're, I don't know, 10 years old or like 70s or. Star Wars has been in our lives. Like, it's been in our lives so many years. It's like be it with the original 3. Bit with the sort of the prequel 3, and now we're getting into 3 more essentially. Well, we've had the first one and we've got 2 more,
and standalone films.
Yeah, well, like we've got Rogue One coming out soon, which is really exciting because it's supposed to be between
3 and 4.
Yeah, so it's supposed to be sort of like an in between, which will be really interesting because they're sort of like they're kind of cutting in a bit deeper, and they're sort of going, right, okay, well we're going to see what's going on, maybe not necessarily with the main characters, but maybe what's going on underneath and that's causing such major events, which is like really, really interesting. So that's there's so many things to look forward to, and it's like with the book coming out, it's another thing to keep us not interested, because obviously we'll always be interested, but it's more things that sort of go, well, maybe this is what's happening, and like because it's all down to interpretation, because I think unless it's in the film, it's kind of not happened, if that makes, for a lot of people, like for us, like we've read the book and it's like oh, okay, well, this makes a lot more sense. But I think for people that don't want to read the book, they're like, oh, we've seen the film, so if the scenes are not in the film, then you're like, well, it's not happened, so we only follow the film. So I think if you have seen the film and you haven't read the book, go and buy the book, and a lot of things will make sense.
Yeah,
like that's just like as from us Morlocks to you, like to our lovely listeners, you should definitely go and buy the book, because I do think that it's very handy in the sense that maybe if you're not really into Star Wars, or like maybe if you are but there's some confusing bits, it does help you clear it up a lot. So that's one way to do it. But it's I just love it. I think it's really good. Everyone was always just like, well, it's basically just a remake of New Hope and blah blah blah, and I was like, well, it's not. It is, but it isn't. Like there's there's the elements, but it's not, because there's different parts to it, and like there's a lot of thing of family. Like there's a really big thing about family in this, like the whole idea of son against his parents, and like a daughter trying to find her family, and like and the idea of Finn not having a family and sort of not knowing knowing where he's come from, and then kind of rejecting that. So I think that's what's really nice is in the sort of message from Star Wars is it is all about family, and it's like where you come from and who you are, and maybe you can be from somewhere but it doesn't define who you are, which I think's great. And I think that's they're putting a lot of effort into sort of the emotional side to it, and it's also it's got everything we want in there. It's got the action, it's got the great characters, it's got the comeback characters, which as soon as you see Harrison Ford and Chewie run on being like oh, Chewie, we're home, everyone went absolutely mad, because they're like it's because Han Solo is a great character. He's that he's the argumentative, he's funny, but he's got a good heart. He's one of those characters that you could have in every film. Like it'd be great, And yes, we've got Leia because she's she's feisty. She's a general now. She's not princess. She's general, which I like, because
as the one of the very few Skywalker women not to turn to, well, one of the very few Skywalkers not to turn to the dark side, is the best of them, quite simply. But yeah, I think Leia is interesting in this one, because again in the book she gets a little bit more, and there are a few characters who get a few more lines and things like that, and there's particularly Han, like when he's telling the story of the Jedi to Rey and Finn, he talks a little bit more, and I was sort of questioning: is that more realistic of how people talk, or is it adding anything, or is it just there?
Yeah.
And to me, on a couple of occasions, it just felt like the writing wasn't quite as tight in the book, and I wonder whether that's because they were working off an earlier script, or just that the author wanted to add a little bit more in. I don't really know. It's impossible to know without asking the author, and he probably wouldn't tell me anyway, because who am I? But no, and I think it's interesting. There are a few omissions from the book as well, which is strange because obviously it's a thing where you can add things in and it not affect it. So the one that I dislike most that isn't in the book is the stormtrooper who calls Finn a traitor. That line is not there.
That was like, I love everyone just went mad for that. Like, it literally is 3 seconds.
Yeah.
But everyone went absolutely nuts for that character, and I think we should have had a bit more of that. Like, maybe we should have had that as a character, and then even if for a glimpse and he turns up again, because that'd be really cool. Because it's like, because again, it's another, it's kind of sort of another stormtrooper that's acting out. Because stormtroopers sort of just go in with their blasters and just fire and kill people.
Well, they try. They often miss.
Yeah, they need a bit more target practice. But he's kind of another sort of standout stormtrooper from Finn, because Finn obviously like betrayed them and like abandoned everything he knew, and kind of he does the traitor sort of stormtrooper. He just sort of, he's got this different weapon, and he's sort of like, he's getting emotion, because most of the time we don't hear stormtroopers just sort of only responding to like, yes, we'll be here, or like
or Jedi mind tricks.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas he lets out this emotional cry of traitor, and it's like, it's that break from what we sort of, which I think that J.J. Abrams has done very well, is like the idea that the stormtroopers actually are not just clones of the same person who like go around, and it's like they have friends, they have feelings, they have emotions, and as much as they're being controlled and and they serve under a greater power, and they're sort of summoned at a moment's notice, it's kind of, I like that fact that they do sort of essentially have a heart, really, because Finn had a heart when his friend died, and this character obviously has a heart that's been broken by maybe a friend or like a colleague who's betrayed them all, who's caused all this sort of essential panic for them. So I think that's really good, and I think they didn't include that in the book, which I thought they should have done, because it's that element of a lot of emotion comes into it, be it anger, love, betrayal, confusion, which happens a lot again with Ben, with Kylo Ren. It's like, we don't know, because there's a theory that Kylo Ren is good.
Well, because of what happens with him and Han, when he's saying, I'm not strong enough for this, or I need your help, there are some people, and I am not sure where I sit on this. I've told you about the theory, but I'm not sure where I sit.
I really believe it, because it makes a lot of sense to me. But that's maybe that's because I can't accept that Han Solo is dead.
he fell quite a long way.
He's not dead.
But no, there's an idea that Ben might have killed Han in order to convince Snoke that he's dark, and Han let him do it.
He didn't kill him because Maz is at the bottom to collect him, because
because where else was she? She disappeared.
Because she got hold of Luke's lightsaber, and his disappeared when his father chops his arm off. How did she get it?
That's true. She is a tiny magical person.
Exactly. So she's this has been a big plan. They've sorted it all out. Maz has picked him up, and he's fine. He's absolutely fine. I'm not accepting it. I refuse to accept it. No, he's not. I refuse to accept it. And then when he comes back, maybe not in the next film, but definitely in third, I will be right.
Flying the Falcon and saying woohoo.
Exactly. And I will be right, and it'll be fine, and I'll prove all of you wrong. But no, it's like it. But it is like, I did.
Please comment about how crazy Charlie is.
But they, I think it was really interesting how they did it, because instead of essentially having it where yes, when Luke found out Darth Vader was his father, he was just kind of like, no, it's impossible, and all that, but he kind of sort of tried to be like, I know you're good, and none of this. It was sort of maybe a bit of the reverse, where it's like, he's not Kylo Ren, Ben Solo's not a full sort of Sith yet, because
Yeah.
he's still being trained. So I think it's that element of it is the inner conflict, and also it's kind of like, as much as like, I am a Sith Lord, I am Darth, whatever. No, well, I'm Kylo Ren, I'm going to be whatever. It's kind of, he's still standing in front of his father, who throughout everything he's done still is accepting him and calling him Ben and being like, I'm here for you. So I think that's also, it would have played on his mind, being like, what do I do? Like, as much as he's maybe been consumed, which I don't think he has, I think there is still some light in him.
He does say that he asks Darth Vader's helmet to purge the light from him. He says he can feel the light side pulling him back, which is the complete flip of Anakin.
Yeah.
Because Kylo wants to be dark, whereas Anakin falls.
Yeah.
It is very obvious that he falls, and when he's killed all those Tusken Raiders, and he's like, and he feels that Obi-Wan's holding him back. You can see the corruption coming, but Anakin and the Jedi, they do see it, but not as clearly as they should.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, he's invoking the spirit of Darth Vader, which they were apparently maybe going to include the idea of a conflicted Force ghost of Anakin and Darth Vader, and then they decided against the idea, which I think would have been quite interesting, because the other Force ghosts are clearly light-sided.
I think it could have possibly turned into a bit of like a caricature of it, and
Yeah.
like it wouldn't have done it justice.
Particularly if they brought Hayden Christensen back, which they were talking about doing.
No, don't do that. But I think they really handled it well, because I think there is that element of he's so torn, and it's like, but I still think it would be really interesting if he does finish his training and stuff like that, if he has a showdown with Leia, because as much as it's like your father, nothing's stronger than a mother's love, and like the whole idea that he's facing down his mother, it's like, I don't think he'll do it. I think it's one, or like I think he'll maybe like he'll hesitate. Like if Snoke's being like kill her or something like this, or like get rid of her, I think he'll hesitate. And
in the sort of Emperor and Darth Vader thing with Luke,
I reckon that'll be the twisting point, where it'll be like, actually, is it all worth it, like to kill both my parents? Like, because at the end of the day, like, as much as Anakin fell and everything, he didn't kill his parents. He didn't like, he didn't kill Obi-Wan. Like, I know he wanted to, but I think I don't think
he tried damn hard.
Yeah, but I think if the push came to the shove, I don't think he would have done it.
Okay.
I think he would have hesitated again and just been like, maybe just maimed him or something. I don't think he could have brought himself to kill him, which is, I think, again, like with the whole thing of Ben killing Han, he didn't do it in like he didn't do it where it was like he cut his head off, or like,
and he didn't. And we've seen Kylo's anger in the film and in the book. We see he breaks stuff.
Yeah.
He slices it up. He when Rey escapes in the book, I don't think we see this in the film, but he cuts up the bench that he was keeping her on.
Yeah.
And that is very different to him, how he was emotionally when he kills Han.
Yeah, because it's just a single blow.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, if he had this such anger and like, I hate my family, and like, I am evil, you would have thought he would have gone absolutely nuts and been like, send the body back, and like this, I do not care for him, he's not my father. But he didn't. It was just a single blow, and he fell. He walked back, and he held his face and he fell. And it was kind of like, he could have pushed him off. He could have done it and pushed him off, been like, I don't care about you. But he didn't. So I think there's still a lot of that up in the air, because it's kind of, it isn't, we've seen him, be the sort of the bratty kid and like, get the anger and stuff. And then suddenly there was like, it was almost as if there was no anger. It was kind of like he sort of did it.
It was just pain.
Yeah, there was kind of like a numbness to it. It wasn't like he was like, I hate you, or like, how could you, or something like this. He just kind of, he had the chat, and then it was suddenly just, he did it, and then that was it. And you're kind of like, oh, like, I would have expected more, him to maybe have been more personal, like, you've held me back, or like, I'm not your son, or like, this is, he didn't say anything like that, and he didn't do anything. So I think maybe, I don't know if it will be the next film, or maybe even the third one, but I think if he faces down Leia, I think it will do a similar thing where he's like, is it all worth it, or like, could I do something? I don't know, but it's all up to interpretation.
I think one of the interesting things that the book does as well is that it expands upon Rey's vision. So there are a couple of extra scenes, and she sees Vader and Luke fight on Bespin rather than just going down the corridor. She also sees the Jedi Temple in flames, and she sees a strange boy. and that's all the description we get. And some people think this might be Kylo / Ben. It could be somebody entirely else. And if
it could be Luke when he was a kid, we don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. It does not give us a lot of description, but there is speculation that this strange boy is Ben, and that would make them brother and sister, possibly. It could be another brother of hers, particularly if she is a Skywalker, because they traditionally have twins. So there's there's a lot of speculation around who this boy could possibly be, but also obviously who Rey is in the pantheon, because as we've said before, I don't think she's a Skywalker. I kind of hope she's not a Skywalker, but then again, who could she be? But this boy in the vision, the fact that he's in the book suggests that there is a significance to him, and particularly he appears in a Force vision. And yes, he's not in the film, so maybe they won't include that later on, and it'll just be there's a strange boy in her vision. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, and there's a few other things that we get a little bit of perspective from Chewie, which is nice, and his feelings on Ben after Ben kills his life friend.
Life friend.
Yeah. Well, no, because there is
they've become life partners.
I was trying to think of the words and I couldn't think of it. No, because the reason that Chewie is with Han is because Han saved his life, and Wookiees dedicate their lives if it's been saved by somebody in like a life pact. So I was trying to think of the right words and I didn't come up with them, and now you've mocked me and it hurts. I'm gonna breeze past that. But yeah, and then also like Han's death is, I think, more foreshadowed in the book.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of points where he has like last looks at the Falcon, and he has like a last more of a last conversation with Leia, and last things with Chewie and things. And although I did see it coming in the film, in the book I do feel like they do go, he's going.
I didn't anticipate it at all.
Okay.
I didn't think like in the book I did. You could see it was coming. Like, I think it was like when you look back for the last look at the Falcon, you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. Like, we know that's coming. But I think in the film, I really wasn't anticipating it. Like, when he shouts out Ben and walks onto that platform, I was like crawling up in my seat, because I was like, oh no, oh please, no. Like, I thought they were going to, like, if anything, they were going to, like, fight, and, like, he'd be thrown over or something. Okay. Like, I sort of thought that would be what would happen. But, when it happened, like, as soon as they hugged, that was when I was like, okay, something's going to happen. Like, I think everybody did at that moment. But for the whole film, I was never going to think that was going to happen.
No, see, I did.
I didn't think that was going to happen. And then as soon as it happened, I remember yelping, and everyone sort of looked at me like, you all right? And I was just like, I'm really sorry. I just was not expecting that. It was just kind of like a proper like, like, no, like.
Yeah, it was a really undignified moment followed by, I'm terribly sorry. I was not expecting that.
I do apologise. But yeah, I just was not expecting it. I really wasn't anticipating
it. That's interesting. Because it's been known for a little while that Harrison Ford sort of thought that Han should die in Empire.
Yeah, but he's coming back to do Indiana Jones like 74. Like, why would he give up Han now, but then carry on Indiana?
He apparently doesn't much like Han as a character.
But why? Tell me these things. No, I understand. Like, when was the last film come out? Like, what, 30 years ago? More?
Oh. Well, it'd be 1983, I think, was Jedi.
Yeah, so like, well, quite a substantial amount of time. I understand that it's like, but then again, it's like, it's one of those classic characters. So I do understand that maybe rehashing the characters maybe not what he wants to do. But you would have thought
it also made him so much money.
So much money. You would have thought he would have stuck on. But at the end of the day, it's done what it's done. But it's interesting.
As much as you don't like it.
As much as it's not happened. He's alive. So what do you think? What do you think's better? Do you prefer the book or the film?
I still think the film's better. I think it communicates better. There are just elements of the book that don't work. But that said, then again, there are elements of the book that it elaborates further. And the science of Starkiller Base is completely different. It's still rubbish, because everybody, when the book came out and people were commenting on, they were like, oh, it's dark matter rather than this strange sun power. And I'm like, it's Star Wars, guys. There's a mythical force that runs through all life. And yes, if you believe that, fair enough. Okay.
There's such characters as Jar Jar Binks. Come on, people.
That is a very good point. That's better than any point I could have made. But no, Star Wars is not scientific. I mean, they jump through a shield at light speed. They should die really quickly, but somehow they manage just to crash, and the Millennium Falcon is still in one piece, because of course it is.
How that ship's still alive, I'll never know. But...
And it is alive, let's be honest. But no, I think the film is substantially better.
Yeah, I agree. I really enjoyed the book, and I think I like the idea that they elaborated on plots that maybe there were some shortcomings with the film, like the idea of like the sort of the first chapter after the prologue, the fact that the prologue was a bit longer, the elements of going into sort of sort of certain things like the base, and like a bit more about like the vision that Rey has. I think that was really good and that helped, but I think having watched the film, I do think it's fantastic, and I do love it, and I think it is probably better for me, and I think today it's going to be hashtag the film was better for us. You tweet what you think was better. Like, we're going to keep the hashtags up, which is hashtag the book was better, or hashtag the film was better in this case. Do let us know what you think. Next week, I'm so excited for next week. So Michael's got to nerd out this week. Yes. I'm now going to nerd out next week.
Much nerding I have done.
I just had to make a noise, sorry. I just can't really... I don't know, I just sort of panicked and made a noise.
She always does this when I do terrible impressions. She just makes crazy noises.
I just made a slight lighter tauntaun noise. I think that's what that's just what I'm doing right now. That's how I'm working it. But no, next week we're going to be doing... because we're going to start sort of doing things of books that may have more than one book to it. And we're going to be sort of looking at all the books. So from next week we're going to be looking at the Lord of the Rings, which I'm so excited about. I'm a massive Lord of the Rings fan. So we're going to be starting at the beginning. We're going to be looking at the Fellowship of the Ring, and we're just going to sort of go through it, and then we're not going to sort of look at the next two books in succession. We're going to leave those for another time, so we can kind of look at other books and sort of take our time to sort of, because they're big books and they're long, very long films. But so that's what we're going to be doing next week. So do follow us. We're on Twitter at Morlock Me. Let us know any suggestions in the comments or on Twitter, and remember to use the hashtags of what you thought was better. I think that's probably the best place to stop, really, after we've done all that.
Yeah.
So we'll see you next week for the amazing Lord of the Rings. But thank you very much for joining us and listening to the amazing Star Wars. So thank you very much.
Bye.